Welcome back. Let's begin our discussion by talking about a few important single key shortcuts. The first is the space bar. If you hit the space bar, Sibelius will start playing wherever the green cursor is located, which is the playback cursor. So space bar starts and stops playback. And hit space bar again to stop. The next important shortcut is the backspace key on a Windows machine or delete on a Mac. So if we make a selection and we hit, let me choose over here, and we hit delete, what happens is if we've selected a measure, a whole bar, it will remove all of the contents and replace it with a rest. Undo that. If we select a note, it will remove that note and replace it with the rest. Now once we have a rest, if we've selected a rest and we hit delete, it will turn it into a hidden rest. If we delete a hidden rest, we'll get this dialog box first asking us if we are for sure wanting to delete this hidden rest. For the most part, we should not choose to do this because then it gives us the incorrect amounts of beats in our bars. So I'll click no. The next key to discuss is the enter key on Windows or the return key on Mac. Make sure you don't confuse these because a Mac has both enter and return, and they do have two different functions. So we're talking about the return key on a Mac or enter key on Windows. First thing is if you select a note, so I'll just choose a note here, and hit return, what it does is it replaces the note with the enharmonic equivalent. So another way to spell the exact same pitch. If we select a bar line and then hit return on a Mac, we get what's called a system break. A system break breaks the system at that particular bar line, places the other staves of music down below. We can also create what's called a page break by clicking on the bar line and then using the does more option, which is the command modifier key, command and hitting return, and that gives us what's called a page break rather than a system break. A page break moves all of the data after our page break onto a new page. So you can see it's been moved over to here. So system break, and undo, and command and return, page break. There are two saving options in Sibelius. You can find them under the File drop-down menu, and they are Save and Save As. The Save function works identical to any other application, and its shortcut is Command-S or Control-S on PC. The Save As function operates a little differently. It allows you to create a new document from the existing document that you're working on. So for example, if I hit Save As here, and I want to save this as orchestral and Todd's version, something like that, and hit Save, you'll notice right now we're still in orchestral version, but as soon as I click on Save, using the Save As command, now the document that we're in is the new document, the one we just created. So we have a duplicate, and from here we can continue working in this new document and saving the other document as a reference or a place to go back to. There may be instances where you're working at school in, say, Sibelius 7.5.1, but maybe you have a copy of Sibelius 6 at home or Sibelius 7 at home, and you want to work on that at home. In order to do that, you'll need to export your document to a previous version. You do that by coming over here to the File menu, coming down to Export, and selecting Previous Version. Here you can choose which version we would like to save Sibelius as, and then click on Export. Okay, let's talk about autosave and auto backup. They sound the same, but they really do have two different functions. By default, autosave in Sibelius will save a copy of your score every 10 minutes in an autosave folder, and this folder is hidden from your view. We don't know where it's at. The purpose of autosave is to keep a copy, a temporary copy of your Sibelius project in a safe place in case your computer or the application crashes. Then when you reboot your machine or start Sibelius again, it will look inside that autosave folder to see if there are any documents in there. If Sibelius closes properly and there isn't a crash, then that autosave folder is automatically deleted. So you want to make sure, obviously, if you knew where it was at, that you didn't place your regular Sibelius files in there, because they would be automatically deleted every time you close or quit Sibelius. Auto backup works a little different than autosave. Auto backup places a copy whenever you hit save into a special folder, and you can find out where that folder is kept, the auto backup folder, by going to Preferences and clicking on the Saving and Exporting tab, and here you can see the location of our auto backup folder. And also you can select here how many backups in total you would like to keep inside of that auto backup folder. So those are the two different auto saving features. Auto save itself, which places a copy inside of your document every 10 minutes, or you can change that number right here. And as long as Sibelius closes properly, that folder or the contents of that folder are deleted when you close the application. And auto backup, which saves a copy of your document every time you hit Command S or Control S on PC into a specific location. Next, let's talk about some of the essential preferences. Okay, let's look at preferences in Sibelius. First, you can get to your preferences menu by coming over here to the Sibelius drop-down menu, selecting Preferences, or you can see there is a shortcut, which on a Mac is Command and comma. So I'll use that and open the Preferences window. Now there's 15 or so different menus on the left-hand side here, and these will toggle different displays, showing you different options. So let's look at some of these briefly. First one is the display menu. Allows you to do a variety of different things, including things like changing the transparency. You can see right over here, changing the transparency of that particular window. You can also affect or change some of the panorama details and a variety of other things. Next is the Files menu. This allows you to open a specific file at, or open all of your files at a specific zoom level. And again, there are some other options in here as well. In Sibelius, the fonts aren't located inside of the .sib or Sibelius file. So because of that, you may find instances where you don't have the actual font that was used in a particular Sibelius file. So this is where you can select font equivalents. Next is the Ideas tab, and we'll talk about that later. Next is Input Devices. You can see this detects all of your hardware that's hooked up to your computer. In this case, I have an Axiom Pro keyboard and a Machine Studio drum pad. And this allows you to also test your keyboard. So if I play right now on my keyboard, you can see that Sibelius is detecting this particular keyboard. So if you're looking for a device, or you're not able to find a device that you have hooked up to your machine, this is where you can go in Preferences to find that. Keyboard shortcuts. Sibelius allows you to alter or change any of the particular keyboard shortcuts that it has assigned to various functions. So if you want to create your own custom template of shortcuts, you can do that. Language is where you choose what language you're going to select, and obviously here are some of the options. I will stick with English. If you want to change some of your mouse options, how your mouse reacts inside of Sibelius, you can do that here. Here's where you select various music fonts that are available in your documents. Note input and paste as cue we will talk about in later sections. The playback tab is where you can choose what type of instruments you're going to have Sibelius play, whether it's jazz or light versions, or chamber music. Saving and exporting, we already talked about briefly, and this is where your autosave and auto backup controls are for Sibelius. Score position is where you can define how and why the score position might change during note input, editing, flexitime recording, and or playback. So for example, you may want to use a different zoom setting during playback and during flexitime recording. So those are where those options are found. Step time and flexitime we'll talk about a little bit more a little later in our course. Textures is where you can select the textures for your particular background. So the textures back behind your paper here on your score. These are actually kind of fun to play with because you can select a variety of different backgrounds. You can see them changing right here. You got leaves or all kinds of different things. And the book says it's kind of fun to mess with the coffee-stained background, which we can look at if you want to. There you go. You can see the coffee stain on my background paper. So back to preferences, and we'll change these back to the standard ones, which is purple gradient. Next is the timeline, and we're going to talk about that a little in lesson 2. Here is where you can determine the types of versions that Sibelius is saving. Then we have word menus, which we will talk about in lesson 8, and some additional things under other. So those are all of the preferences.